Texas has now moved to a toss-up state, officially. Arizona, toss-up. Nevada, toss-up. Florida, toss-up. Georgia moves from toss-up to now tilting Democratic. North Carolina has now moved from toss-up to tilting Democratic. Wisconsin, where President Trump has been spending a boatload of time, still a toss-up. Pennsylvania, a toss-up. Pennsylvania, Joe Biden has about a 5-point lead right now. So let's analyze Pennsylvania, my home state. Very tricky state, right? You have Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, of course, larger urban areas, of course, usually vote Democratic. But you have the middle of the state, which we kind of grew up in Pennsylvania. It was called, a lot of people would jokingly call it, Pennsyltucky. Pennsyltucky. So that's good news. That's good news. He's got some good news on my baby girl. Okay, good. Good. Okay. Anyway, so Pennsylvania in the center of the state has traditionally, it can be toss-up depending on, when Bill Clinton, when Barack Obama, went for Trump instead of Hillary. So it can fluctuate. It can undulate, if you will. But President Trump has been pushing he's trying to close with going back to his roots on these issues, talking about fracking, talking about closing up the oil industry, how it's going to hurt Pennsylvania jobs, et cetera, all of these things that he's trying to hit on right now. So Biden is up in Pennsylvania about five, almost 6 points. Hillary Clinton was up also in the last minute polling. Even on election day, Hillary was up by, I think, 2 points in Pennsylvania, or 1.5 points. She loses Pennsylvania by almost like 0.7. So if you think about those numbers, let's think about the Hillary numbers for a second. In Pennsylvania, she's up 2 points, or 1.5 points on election day. The very polling that came out on election day in Pennsylvania. And I remember I was out in Butler, Pennsylvania that day covering the election in a the excitement for Trump out there was strong in Butler, Pennsylvania. Not so much anymore. That has faded. Not a ton, but it's faded significantly. Enough that Joe Biden can make a play there and pull this victory off in Pennsylvania. So right now, the margin of error, even if Biden is with 5 points and you still take away those 2 Hillary points, he's still up and still wins with 5 days left. Now, things could shift. I don't think they're going to shift that much in 5 days, though. If what we've seen so far is these numbers have held strong for months, and they haven't moved. People have made up their mind on this. So Pennsylvania, if he loses Pennsylvania and Florida, it's over. It's over before the cows come home. So Florida, of course, is another toss-up state. Interestingly, though, President Trump has pulled up a lot of advertising, $5 million in ad spending in Florida. President Trump he's still running about $300,000 left that he has to spend in Florida, but he's taking that additional $5 million and putting it into Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and reallocating that money. What do you make of that? Think Trump loses Florida? Or do you think he's so confident in Florida that he's going to pull up the ad spending there? Interesting to look. Certainly the Latino population is a very strong Cuban-American population that's supporting Trump in Florida. So interesting to see the Latino dynamic in Florida and a lot of those New Yorkers who have moved to Florida over the past few years. How do they stack up? How do they help influence this? There's been a mass exodus from New Jersey and New York to the Sunshine State. So all of this, of course, comes on the backdrop of coronavirus. So the latest coronavirus news this morning is not good. In the final week before election, new coronavirus infections have soared to an all-time high. The data out this morning is really troubling in the United States. And of course, we can thank this cold weather for all of this, right? Look at Maine right now, 54% increase. So these states up in this cold weather area, 51% increase. Now everyone's going indoors, mingling with each other. 124% increase in Vermont. New Hampshire up. All of these states in brown are increasing. Dark brown, Vermont, most trouble. This is bad. So this is virtually guaranteeing, folks, that the pandemic will be the most prominent issue in America as voters choose the next president. Clearly, unemployment, pandemic, top of the list. That's not the way it was back in January, though, was it? The big picture right now, cases are surging and local hospitals are straining. President Trump, of course, continuing to say that, hey, we're rounding the corner. This is done. We're done with this thing. Remember during the debate, he said, we're rounding the corner. We're done. Yesterday, he was at a campaign stop. And at a campaign stop, he said the same thing. He said, we are turning the corner. It's perfect. He said, look at this. It's perfect. He said, we're rounding, he said, like this racetrack. He was speaking at a racetrack. He said, look at this. We're rounding like this racetrack. Look at this. It's perfect. We're rounding the curve. We will vanquish the virus, he said. Here's what he said at the debate, if you forgot.
It will go away. And as I say, we're rounding the turn. We're rounding the corner. It's going away.
Okay. Now we're at a record, an all-time high. And by the way, those states, remember during the debate when he said, they had a spike in Texas, they had a spike in Wisconsin, and it went away. It went away. He said that during the debate a week ago. Well, look at the map again. Look where these spikes are happening again. Texas, Wisconsin, areas that he said it went away. Well, it's back. It's back. Meanwhile, does Joe Biden have a plan for coronavirus other than like a national mask mandate? I don't know. I don't think he has much of anything. Democrats are, of course, playing the card right now that the pandemic is all Trump's fault, and that their lack of action back in February and March are the reason we're in this predicament right now. No national leadership on this front. I've been saying that there's been no national leadership. But what's your alternative? What can you, a national mask mandate? Pushing for a vaccine? We're already doing that. What else is there? What is your plan, Joe? I haven't heard much of anything.
Come on, man.
Sorry. Joe Biden said yesterday, quote, even if I win, it's going to take a lot of hard work to end this pandemic. I'm not running on the false promise of being able to end this pandemic by flipping a switch. We will start on day one doing the right things. We'll let science drive our decisions. Okay, but what are those things? That's what I'm asking. What are those things? No one expects anyone to be able to flip a switch on this. Look at Germany this morning. New lockdowns throughout Europe. Germany, Angela Merkel they were being heralded as the saviors of coronavirus. Science in Germany, testing, tracing, all of that. Science, science, science. Great. Germany announced a full month lockdown now with closures of restaurants, bars, gyms until the end of November. Schools, businesses, and shops can stay open as long as distancing measures are followed. France, which our hearts go out to that country this morning, yet another terrorist attack there, as a man yelling Allah Akbar kills 3 individuals, beheads 2 of them in Nice, France. France announced a stricter lockdown until December 1st, closing all restaurants and shops. Primary schools will remain in person, but universities are asked to go online. Taiwan. What is Taiwan doing right? Well, number one, it's an island. It holds the world record right now for 200 days without a new COVID case. I love how we praise all these island countries. New Zealand. God, you have no COVID. And your borders are closed and you're an island. So unless COVID people are parachuting in, spreading COVID, like, oh no, here comes another one. He's jumping out of that plane. Run. It's COVID Johnny. He's jumping in here. Seal your borders and don't let anyone in. Australia, the same thing. I have a friend in Australia who had her second child, and my old co-host, Anna, by the way, and her parents in America haven't been able to see the child yet. She had it. Did she have it during lockdown? February? January, February. And her parents in North Carolina haven't been able to see him. Sad, isn't that? It's crazy. And there's no sign that that's going to happen anytime soon. He might be 1 year old before he even gets to meet her grandparents. That's why there's no COVID there. They've locked down these island towns, these island countries. So these numbers are scary, folks. I want to tell you about today's sponsor, our friends over at Outlet Finance. So if you want a 6% interest savings account, where you can move some of this money right now. Many of you were asking yesterday about, hey, I got this 401k. I want to move some money out of, where should I put it? Well, I have a savings account that I use, gives you a 6% return annually on every dollar you put in there. You will never get that at your local bank. Why? Because it's backed by cryptocurrency. It's backed by Ethereum. So you can deposit your money anytime, withdraw it at any time. They've got insurance on your money, and they will deposit free money into your account just for opening account. It's just a savings account. So you can put $100 in there. You can test it out for a month, see what you like. You get to see your interest every week popping up inside the app. It's really cool. So the way to get that free money, you have to use our link. Go to morninginvest.com/outlet. It's not available in every state. I have a meeting with them. They're going to fill me in on, they're working on Texas and New York. They're going to be adding some of these states. Some states have higher regulation they have to deal with. So it is backed by cryptocurrency. Go to morninginvest.com/outlet to start earning 6% on every dollar that you have in your savings account, rather than losing money every day when you have it in one of those Wells Fargo or other savings accounts where you have a 0.001% return on interest. That means, and inflation is 2%, that means you're losing money every day that your money is in one of those savings accounts. So at least get an account that helps you beat inflation. That's the goal. So our thanks to Outlet. We've got more to get to here on the show. I'm going to talk about this. Check in on Grover here. How's this guy doing? You okay over there, buddy? Did he get like a scratch on his head? What is that? A little mohawk? All right. Well, President Trump could be one of the worst environmental presidents we've seen in my lifetime. And today, he can add another arrow to his quiver. Because this morning, President Trump is about to roll back. He's going to open up more than half of Alaska's Tongass National Forest. He woke up to this headline this morning. Trump to strip protections from Tongass National Forest, one of the biggest intact temperate rainforests in America and in the world. So what this will happen is he's going to open this up to logging and other forms of development, this amazing area. And they're going to allow logging and other forms of development, according to a notice posted Wednesday, stripping protections that had safeguarded one of the world's most intact temperate rainforests for nearly 2 decades. Of course, they were put in place under President Clinton back in 2001. This is one of the most sweeping public lands rollbacks that Trump has enacted as president. Hey, trying to sneak these things in right before Election Day, right? Get these in there right before Election Day. The reason that this is so troubling, according to environmentalists, is because this is an old growth forest. These trees are twice the age of America. Can you whenever I hear stuff like that, like, hey, that turtle is older than America. You ever see one of those like big, massive turtles? What are they, like tortoise? What are they? Those big, I don't know. I'm looking over at you like you're a biologist, like you're a zoologist. Philip, do you know what those things are? The giant ones, you know, that you see them at a zoo. They don't move. Tortoise? Yeah, like the Australian. Turtles live in the sea. Okay. Yeah. You're not tuning in here. You're not tuning into Animal Planet to get your animal news, that's for sure. Anyway, the big ass ones, you know what I'm talking about. Those things like are 300 years old. Anytime I hear that that's the case, I'm like, wait a second, that's older than America? That turtle? That tortoise? I can't wrap my heads around it. I have multiple heads. Give me some more coffee this morning. So these trees are like 400 and 500 years old. Massive. And the reason that this is such an issue is because it's considered a carbon sink, meaning that it's been sucking CO2 out of the atmosphere for 500 years. And when you cut these trees down, environmentalists say that it's the equivalent of putting 10 million new cars on the road. Think about that for a minute. Putting 10 million new cars on the road at a time when we have increasing CO2 emissions in this world and temperatures rising, sea levels rising, Arctic ice shelf in Antarctica collapsing, glaciers melting into the water. Yeah, we need more CO2. This is a good opportunity. Unbelievable. So for many years, federal and academic scientists have identified the Tongass forest as an ecological oasis there, serving as a massive carbon sink. It has massive implications in the environment. Key habitat for wild Pacific salmon that's there, trout, black-tailed deer, all kinds of other species in this area. Has the highest density of brown bears in North America. Some of these trees, by the way, I'm giving you half. Some of them are 1,000 years old. Some of these trees are 1,000 years old. So they're going to open up these roads now to allow them to build roads into this forest so these logging companies can go in and start cutting them down. Now, if Vice President Biden is elected president on November 3rd, he would immediately probably roll this back on January 20th and 21st when he's elected through executive order. But you have that window of time. So now all these logging companies can go in there and basically rape the countryside in a short amount of time. Build these roads, get in there, and start clear cutting these forests. Tongass, Dominic DeSala, who's a chief scientist with the Earth Island Institute, says wild tropical rainforests are the lungs of the planet. And he said it's America's last climate sanctuary. So this will be published in the Federal Register, and it will allow 188,000 forested acres available for timber harvest. Now, what about the senators? Dan Sullivan, our little crony Dan Sullivan, the senator from Alaska, who, of course, we've been following here on the show. I'm watching that race closely because of his ties to the Pebble mining. The Pebble mine, of course, being in cozy with the Pebble mine and trying to push for that, being told to keep his mouth shut because these guys are donating so much money to his campaign and re-election. Where does he come down on this? He went to meet with President Trump months ago and lobbying him to have President Trump roll this regulation back. So Dan Sullivan says it'll be good for our economy because Alaska is hurting. I get that. But is this the answer to open up this pristine wildlife preserve so that these logging companies could go in there and rape the side of the mountainsides in Alaska? That's going to help so many Alaskans. Are you kidding me? No, it'll make these big companies richer. That's what it'll do. So Dan Sullivan went to President Trump and asked him to roll these regulations back. And apparently in the meeting, this is interesting, according to the people that were in this meeting, President Trump said, "I don't understand how you have an economy without roads." When the Washington Post reached out for comment from the White House on that, they didn't comment. They didn't verify that. They wouldn't say anything about it. How do you have an economy in Alaska that has no roads? So Trump's like, yeah, I want roads up there. Got to get roads. How do you have an economy? Through a rainforest. So President Trump has now rolled back or weakened more than 100 different environmental regulations. So add this to your quiver, Mr. President. Think elections don't matter? Through executive action, these things can be President Clinton did it under executive action, protecting this forest. President Trump, through executive action, rolls it back. You don't think elections matter? They certainly do. Because we don't have to wait for Congress to get off its butt to do any of this. Going back to Theodore Roosevelt being able to push these executive actions through. The reason we have Yellowstone, the reason we have these pristine national parks, because of Theodore Roosevelt, a Republican. And by the way, my favorite president. Let me know your thoughts on this. How many Alaskans are watching this morning? Where do you come down on this? Should we open these timberlands up to logging? Or should we protect them? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Coffee break. Well, this story absolutely infuriated me last night. If you were following me on Twitter, I'm Clayton Morris on Twitter, by the way. I was tweeting like mad about this because Boeing just announced that they are going to have to lay off an additional 7,000 people. Now, do you think that these are all executives making millions of dollars a year? No. These are not executives making lots of money. Of course not. These are low-level employees at Boeing that will now lose their jobs because Boeing says we're going to have to lay these people off. You know, we don't have any stimulus money. We don't have any stimulus money from the federal government. We don't have anything else, anybody bailing us out anymore. So we're going to have to lay off an additional 7,000 people. And to me, my mind exploded last night. So I started digging into the numbers because Boeing for me is, you know, when you watch the show, when I mentioned Lockheed Martin or Boeing, these are some of the companies that I'm constantly talking about as in the pockets of Washington. That Washington just lines the pockets of these defense contractors with billions of dollars in contracts every year, paid for by you. You know, it's quite possible that of these 7,000 people that are about to be laid off, their tax dollars went in a circuitous way right back to Boeing. Meaning they worked at Boeing. It's almost like a modern day version of sharecropping, isn't it? Like they're working at Boeing and then they get their taxes taken out of their paycheck. It goes to the federal government. The government then just sends it right back to Boeing. And these employees like, can I sleep on the land and have room and board? It's like people, you know, it's like people working for mining companies and having to rent the cot and the little bed and their pickaxe and their thing and their helmet from the mining boss so that they can go work in that mine and make $1 a month. So just to look at these numbers, just to give you a frame of reference of how much money we send to Boeing every year as a defense contractor. By the way, I looked through there's 30 to 50 companies that American taxpayers just pay billions of dollars to every year. And every year it goes up. Went up under President Trump. President Trump increased the amount of money going to Boeing by upwards of 20%. Boeing makes upwards of $40 billion a year from the federal government. Oh, and by the way, bailed out by Wall Street, helped in big ways by the federal stimulus back in March. So we bail out Boeing. We make sure that they're getting tons of money every year in the form of defense contracts so they can make jets and aircraft and things that we don't even use or need, so that we can continue fighting endless wars in the Middle East while the American people suffer. On top of that, this was the thing that blew me away. Boeing yesterday, I'm going to quote, Boeing's third quarter earnings weren't as bad as expected. Boeing's third quarter earnings weren't as bad as expected. So they actually they're profitable. They actually did pretty darn well. Despite, all things being equal, they actually did pretty darn well in their third quarter earnings. So the federal government gives them $40 billion a year in contracts. That's not enough to keep these people employed. Can't Congress step in and say, Boeing, you're not going to lay off these 7,000 people because if you do, we're going to cut your funding. But they don't have balls. They don't have a backbone. Every member of Congress has to answer to Boeing in some capacity. You know why? Because Boeing has been brilliant, building multiple headquarters in multiple states. So guess what? You always have a constituency that works at Boeing. And therefore, if you're a senator in this state or you're a congressman in that state, I can't do that to Boeing because Boeing's headquarters is in my backyard. How many Boeing headquarters are there? Yeah, there's like 100. Why? Because they put them all over the place so that you're always in their backyard. You're always in a politician's backyard. Brilliant. Don't just have one headquarter. have headquarters, have buildings, employ people in all of these different states because the government pays you to do it. So members of Congress, you can't go and say to Boeing, hey, we're going to cut your funding. No, they can't, because all of their elections are also paid for. These politicians are all bought and sold by these companies that they funnel money to. They have carte blanche. They can do whatever they want. There's other big companies on this list as well. Tomorrow, maybe on the show, I'll go down the list of companies. You got companies on there like Honeywell, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, and the list goes on. All companies you know well that you're paying for. Here's another one that we paid for. Walmart got plenty of money from the federal government. Walmart right now is truly looting America. If you think about the Walton family becoming $53 billion richer in the past few months during the pandemic, while cutting the pay and hours of its workers. So this headline this morning from Walmart. Walmart cuts workers' hours, but increases workload as sales rise amid the pandemic. They have under Trump, they received a $2.2 billion a year tax break. And guess what they did with that money? This is what I've been saying, folks. Watch my show a few weeks ago where I talked about the coming collapse in the stock market. It's unfolding right now with this overvaluated stock market, 70% higher valuations on stocks than even should be. Watch my full video on the stock market collapse. I'll make sure I have a card up here so you can see that if you're watching the replay. So check that out. But I specifically talk about these companies not using that money that they get from the federal government. So, thank you, Grover. He can't stand this kind of crap. This is the kind of stuff that really gets under his skin, gets under his collar. Sorry for this interruption, folks. So if you watch my video on the coming collapse, you'll see one of the big issues is that all of these companies are getting tons of money from the federal government in the form of tax breaks. First of all, they're not even paying anything in taxes, but then they're also getting stimulus money and additional tax breaks like Walmart. $2.2 billion a year under Trump. What do? Do they reinvest it into hiring more people? Research and development, like how can we make our stores safer for customers? How can we, do better in the environment? How can we make sure, by the way, have you ever bought ground beef at Walmart? Pick up a package of ground beef at Walmart and you'll notice half of it, if you buy, it's disgusting. You'll look at the countries, where does it come from? It's like they take ground beef from like countries all over the world, they package it into one package. So you'll notice, there's some meat in here from China. Yeah. There's some meat in here from Argentina and Montana. In this one package. Think about the carbon footprint and nastiness of that beef. I think this gives me chills. 3 different countries' standards on what goes into their meat being flown all around the world somehow. And how did they wind up in this one package of ground beef? Now, they may have changed that since I reported on that just a short time ago, but I doubt it. Nevertheless, this company now is buying back shares of its own stock, $20 billion in stock they've bought back. So they're not hiring new people. They're not doing research and development at a level that we could be, wow, they're doing all of this great stuff. How can they minimize packaging? How can they do some amazing things? No, they're not doing that. By the way, that's why Congress says that we need tax incentives for these businesses. Anytime you watch a politician talk about giving tax breaks to businesses, they always say that it goes back to the worker, right? That the worker is going to get, they're going to be able to hire more people, increase people's salaries. And then they're going to do research and development. This is my favorite. Congress always says this. We need to cut taxes because companies need to do research and development. They're not doing it. We have enough evidence now to show you that that's not what's happening. So Walmart, Walmart cuts workers' hours, but increases their workload as sales rise. So now these workers will have to work less or fewer hours, but while they're there for their 15-hour shift or their 15 hours a week, they're going to have to work twice as hard, unloading, stacking more boxes, putting more product on shelves, distributing more things in the, at Amazon distribution centers, like Amazon distribution centers, because online sales from Walmart are increasing. So sales are going up, profits are going up, but we're going to cut your hours. And on top of that, sidebar story that's still in the big business wheelhouse, but I just found it incredibly troubling. Of course, many of you know that the reason one of the reasons I think you can't trust mainstream media is because it's all consolidated at the top. And all these billionaires that own these different media companies, there's like 8 of them that own and control basically everything you see on CNN, Fox, MSNBC, the mainstream media, and read. Pick up a USA Today. You want a joke? You want a joke of a newspaper? Pick up the USA Today. Run by Gannett. Massive. Think about the amount of money that's consolidated at the top. Jeff Bezos pays nothing in taxes. The owner of Amazon, richest man in the world, of course, bought the Washington Post a few years ago. And among other things, we now know, although they won't talk about it, and the Washington Post won't really even report on it, but that Amazon has a contract, a $5 billion contract with the CIA. So the CIA gets to run their pipeline through Amazon's web services and Amazon Cloud. The CIA has a contract with Amazon for their web backend and infrastructure. Now we learned this morning that Jeff Bezos is in talks and would like to buy CNN. Well, we already couldn't trust. If you think you're now going to be able to trust, I trust CNN to begin with. Now you're going to be able to trust CNN. All of these, these billionaires that want to control the media narrative in this country and the censorship that unfolds as a result of this. I mean, just look at rich boy Jack Dorsey, founder of Twitter, who was on Capitol Hill yesterday. Actually, wasn't on Capitol Hill. I think he was like in some bunker somewhere, like Ted Kaczynski up in Montana, being grilled by the Senate Banking Committee yesterday. And whoa, was this a lot of fun to watch. One thing was interesting, too, about this yesterday is that Jack Dorsey, I think Congress placed a little too much emphasis on Twitter. Like, a lot of people don't use Twitter. It's not as popular as Facebook and Google. And yet there was an odd amount of time paid towards Twitter yesterday. But I think maybe rightly so, because of the really egregious censorship that they did a few days ago of the Hunter Biden story in the New York Post. Like, what gives you the right to censor speech? These major platforms, which people rely on to read the news, to learn about what's going on in the world. Twitter has been held up over the years as a beacon of hope among journalists because we could actually get information out of authoritarian countries during uprisings. Think about the spring. What is it called? Why can't I think of the name of it? Spring Muslim. No. Why can't I think of it? No, not Ramadan. I'm thinking of the revolutions in Arab Spring. Thank you. It's been a little while since the Arab Spring. But Twitter was able to get information out of it because all people needed was a cell phone and a cell connection. They were able to get information out, vital information about what's happening, these uprisings. Has the power to overthrow governments, this communications channel. When all of this stuff is consolidated at the top, and Jack Dorsey gets to sit back in his office, in his Silicon Valley office, and pick and choose, or have a policy that picks and chooses who wins and who loses, that we're going to censor conservative voices. We're going to squash this Hunter Biden story. Great, let journalists discuss, let journalists get to the bottom of this. But you're going to pick and choose what pieces of news get on your platform. The same thing is true and happening on Facebook. Picking and choosing winners. What stories get elevated? Google the same thing. Go try to look for a negative story on Wikipedia, which is absolute garbage, Wikipedia. Go try to look for a negative story about Wikipedia, and you won't find it till like page 2 of Google search results, 2 or 3, and even then it's buried. No one goes to page 2 of Google. Try to find that kind of stuff, and you can't, because these big companies push that stuff down, suppress it, quiet voices. We've seen it on YouTube. We've seen it other places. So Jack Dorsey got the brunt of Senator Ted Cruz's attack yesterday. Watch Senator Ted Cruz lay into him. And I just couldn't stand like Jack Dorsey's smugness about all. He's sitting there with this like Ted Kaczynski beard. Watch this. Too smart for you.
About the behavior of both of their companies. I would note that Facebook is at the minimum at least trying to make some efforts in the direction of defending free speech. I appreciate their doing so. Google, I agree with the concerns that Senator Klobuchar raised. I think Google has more power than any company on the face of the planet. And the antitrust concerns are real. The impact of Google is profound. And I expect we will have continued and ongoing discussions about Google's abuse of that power and its willingness to manipulate search outcomes to influence and change election results. But today, I want to focus my questioning on Mr. Dorsey and on Twitter. Because of the 3 players before us, I think Twitter's conduct has by far been the most egregious. Mr. Dorsey, does Twitter have the ability to influence elections?
No.
You don't believe Twitter has any ability to influence elections?
No, we are one part of a broad spectrum of communication channels that people have.
So you're testifying to this committee right now that Twitter, when it silences people, when it censors people, when it blocks political speech, that has no impact on elections?
People have choice of other communication channels with which.
Not if they don't hear information. If you don't think you have the power to influence elections, why do you block anything?
Well, we have policies that are focused on making sure that more voices on the platform are possible. We see a lot of abuse and harassment, which ends up silencing people and having them leave from the platform.
All right, Mr. Dorsey, I find your opening questions, your opening answers absurd on their face. But let's talk about the last 2 weeks in particular. As you know, I have long been concerned about Twitter's pattern of censoring and silencing individual Americans with whom Twitter disagrees. But 2 weeks ago, Twitter, and to a lesser extent, Facebook, crossed a threshold that is fundamental in our country. 2 weeks ago, Twitter made the unilateral decision to censor the New York Post in a series of 2 blockbuster articles, both alleging evidence of corruption against Joe Biden, the first concerning Ukraine, the second concerning communist China. And Twitter made the decision, number 1, to prevent users, any user, from sharing those stories. And number 2, you went even further and blocked the New York Post from sharing on Twitter its own reporting. Why did Twitter make the decision to censor the New York Post?
We had a hack materials policy that we.
When was that policy adopted?
In 2018, I believe.
In 2018, go ahead. What was the policy?
So the policy is around limiting the spread of materials that are hacked. We didn't want Twitter to be a distributor for hack materials. We found that the New York Post, because it showed the direct materials, screenshots of the direct materials, and it was unclear how those were attained, that it fell under this policy. Now,
so in your view, if it's unclear the source of a document, and in this instance, the New York Post documented what it said the source was, which it said it was a laptop owned by Hunter Biden that had been turned into repair store. So they weren't hiding what they claimed to be the source. Is it your position that Twitter, when you can't tell the source, blocks press stories?
No, not at all. Our team made a fast decision. The enforcement action, however, of blocking URLs, both in tweets and in DM, in direct messages, we believe was incorrect. And we changed it
today,
24
right now, the New York Post.
Still, to this day, it's blocked. So we acted quickly and unblocked it. That's the CEO of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, who literally looks like he just came out of a cave after a 4-month sojourn. He's probably going to go back there soon. But we don't look like that. Did you see him? You want me to look like this?
His right.
I know it's his right.
Lockdown.
Yeah, I'm sure he's suffering in his lockdown. Just he's like Kim Kardashian, probably went to her private island for a little barbecue. But him saying we can just literally, we made a decision. We looked at it. We thought, well, we don't know. We can't really verify where this came from. The dissemination of information. What about WikiLeaks? What about when information, and this is the reason that this is a joke, is because there's been plenty of situations where this information could have been out there in the public. Like Republicans missed opportunities yesterday to make for a case like why we need to have this change in the first place. Everyone knows that these guys lean left. They have they have plenty of opportunities when there's material that is favorable to Democrats that they let live on their platform. But when it's against Joe Biden, when it's against Democratic candidates, we deplatform them, we take them out of here, we throw them off. That Mike Pence fly is back. Get out of here, Pence. Some senators did push back on this, saying that censors in good faith without regard to political ideology. Mississippi Senator Roger Wicker pointed out that Twitter took 2 months to add a warning label to Chinese propaganda, suggesting that the U.S. military brought the coronavirus to China. That was okay for them to let that go on their platform for 2 months. So again, my point is, you're going to censor. What are you going to censor? You're going to just pick and choose? But I think this is clearly getting out of hand. You're seeing people's Twitter accounts being shut down. You're having people that are speaking out against people on the far left, by the way, progressives who are speaking out against Biden. Having their Twitter accounts taken down. Let me know your thoughts on this. What did you think of this testimony yesterday? I thought it was, I thought the smugness of Dorsey really stood out to me. And I think they spent an inordinate amount of time going after Twitter. When again, I think we need to look more closely at Google, Facebook. The thing is, though, it's not going to happen. Because when you have billions of dollars pouring in from these companies supporting these left-leaning candidates, it's going to be hard to affect change there. You're only going to be able to get out information. Like I've had certain YouTube videos that have been hurt and blocked here because I've spoken out against Biden. And I've told you things here on this show that are true. And I've had ad suitability issues and other things that have popped up as a result of it. So thank you for supporting independent journalism. That's what the show is all about. We're going to continue to do these types of stories because I think they're important. No one's talking about them. And when you're going to have this consolidation, Jeff Bezos owning CNN, people being deplatformed because they're sharing information that might rub you the wrong way, we're going to silence those voices. I mean, this is the type of stuff that growing up we would talk about North Korea. We would talk about China. Like, can you believe they'll block social media sites in China? Yeah, it's happening here. Disgusting. Let me know your thoughts on this, and thank you for subscribing to the channel. You can subscribe to our morning newsletter, by the way. morninginvest.com is the newsletter. It's totally free, delivered to your inbox first thing in the morning. So go there and subscribe. Thank you for being a great part of our community.